Hey, everybody.
Hey! Home studio recording session.
It's a Matt and Jeannie Fest in the Wi-Fi pod
It is.
this week, which can only mean one thing,
Archetypes.
or everyone else is busy.
Oh,
But yeah, archetypes.
archetypes.
Archetypes is the topic of the day.
It's a thing we do.
Yeah, it is. It's been seasonal. Is this the last? No. This is, I think we have the lover still for the masculine.
Do we?
Don't know.
We did the mother and the warrior.
We did Mother Warrior. We did Crone and King.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, so I think we're halfway there.
So we skipped.
Oh.
We skipped. We went out of order. It's great. It makes sense.
Well, this is good because I need to establish the order. Now, when you say order, whose order?
Like, we were doing it seasonally. So right now it's spring.
Yeah, so we're doing the Maiden.
So we're doing Maiden and...
Whew. Sorry. You were saying?
So right now it's spring. So we're doing Maiden, Magician.
Yes.
We did Mother Warrior, which is summer.
Ah, okay.
And we did King and Crone, which is winter. So we missed.
Okay.
But it's great. It's a good topic sentence that I can make from this scenario, which is you actually have to address the Maiden and the Magician if you want to embrace the witch and the lover.
Okay.
So if there's healing to do in these archetypes, if there's healing to do for you in regards to the Maiden or the Magician, it's going to be hard. Well, I would say harder to access the fullness of the witch and your magic.
I always forget until you tell me that the feminine archetypes will follow a more cyclical kind of order and present themselves in that way, where the men is like, ugh, which one do I need today? I'll take that one. That's the one I need. Like shirt you're going to wear. Which isn't necessarily true. I feel like it's easier to do that for a masculine archetype than the feminine.
Yeah,
Tell me I'm wrong,
I think anybody can cultivate. Like, you can have the thing where you're like, well, yes, I'm in my Maiden archetype right now, which wants to be very like spontaneous and in the like just flow of whimsy, curiosity, expansion, those kind of things. And I can't just float around. You know, like, even though that's the default setting that is like easy to tap into, it doesn't mean that you can't stretch and call in the other archetypes if you need them.
Okay. Before we get any further with archetypes, do we have any front desks kicking around? Didn't know if you did or not.
Front desks.
You haven't been on this podcast in a while.
I know. I feel like you guys have just been running with it without me.
Yeah. I don't believe that for a second.
And yeah, I can't think of any. I can't think of any pressing. I mean, my brain is all wrapped up in my dissertation today. Like,
right, which you were kind of had a brainstorm
I had
last
a brainstorm last night.
Yeah.
And
which, for the record, again, whenever you have that and you're staring off into space, and I say something like, "Honey, what are you thinking of?" and you say nothing.
Nothing.
And then the next day you say something like, "No, actually, I had a really huge brainstorm about my dissertation," and you launch into this spiel about what the inspiration for the idea was, and then what your idea was. I'm like, you just could have said, "I'm thinking about that."
Well,
you didn't need to go into all the detail if you didn't want to.
Be that as it may.
It's just a far cry from nothing.
My style is definitely to not say things until I have a fully formed, like, way of articulating.
Sure.
You know, like, I don't... and
again, that information would have been good to have too.
And I'm not saying this is like the right way to do anything. I'm just saying this is just how I notice that I operate in the world, which is like, I will say nothing if I haven't fully thought something all the way through.
I get it.
Like, I just don't.
Right, because if you are literally in the middle of the brainstorm, and if I am asking you what you're thinking of, and you want to answer me in detail, you are stopping, you're thinking about what you just thought, and it pulls you out of that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect that. I just, like, it wasn't nothing. And you could have been like, I'm just having a dissertation brainstorm. And I'd be like, all right, I'll leave you.
Just having a brainstorm.
Yeah, just say that next time.
Maybe.
You know, when I say communication, like, this is what I mean. You know what I mean when I say I wish you communicated differently is when I say, what are you thinking of? And you say nothing, I'm like, oh, it is nothing. When it's the opposite of nothing.
Well, I think what I mean is nothing that pertains to anything that's happening in this present moment.
We were laying in bed having just watched an episode of Righteous Gemstones.
It's true.
So
it was really completely unrelated to anything that was going on in the present moment. Yeah. So it was just like...
That's also okay.
You know,
just say
not
that.
really anything important.
Just say that, though.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay, fine. We're going to put this shoe on the other foot this week.
Oh.
We're going to see how it goes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Let's see.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're worrying about this is indication that, you know, maybe that, you know, I'm not saying you need to overhaul your communication style. Just a little tweak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always nice if your partner will give you information when you request it.
Oh, I feel like there's a piece of evidence on the other end of that sentence.
Nope.
So, in the spirit, let's talk about archetypes. Yeah, magician and maiden.
Maiden.
I think this is the one when you explained it to me why the masculine and feminine or how they match energetically made the most sense.
Okay.
Because if it is for the masculine, the magician is like the keeper of knowledge or wisdom or some type of skill or some type of
Merlin.
Yeah, like the wizard, right? Like some type of sort of leader in a certain way, maybe culturally,
teacher.
like teacher, right?
Yeah.
And then the maiden is just like wanting to drift through the ether and curiosity. Those two, like one seems more grounded than the other, which also balances out. And the idea that one is so like willing to experience or learn or hear about,
open to learning.
Yeah, and the other one's like, oh, well, I could talk about this, or I could introduce you to this, and it's like a nice balance, and it just made sense to me.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to remember about the dynamic between the magician and the maiden is that the magician is teaching with play and fun and whimsy. That's why I said, like, this is less like Daniel, Mr. Miyagi dynamic and more Arthur, Merlin dynamic.
Okay.
Because it isn't heavy-handed. Like, the maiden is interested in learning through joy, play, fun, curiosity, expansion, experiential learning, like, you know, being out in the world and travel, trying new things, new food, new experiences, rather than like hard lines of like perhaps like more disciplined ways of presenting information.
Okay. So that makes a lot more sense now that you explain it. When Mr. Miyagi is like, you know, wax the car, paint the fence. Yeah. Those aren't the ways the maiden wants to learn. The maiden, if we're looking at, you say Arthur and Merlin, I go right to the Disney movie, which was based on the book by T.H. White, The Once and Future King. Like that one has a lot of magic, and he turns them into animals, like a bird, a fish, a squirrel, and stuff, to experience that way.
Right.
Alrighty.
Yeah, it's like the use of magic and let's say like enchantment or power in a way that is lighthearted and fun and piques curiosity and also like takes off some of the load of potential like pressure of learning.
Okay.
Whereas I think sometimes people want to go to like teacher-student dynamic that you would see in a scenario like Daniel and Mr. Miyagi. But that is actually the interplay of masculine archetypes teaching and learning from each other. So that's like a warrior king dynamic. That is the warrior learning from the king.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I love that. That's interesting.
Well, I mean, we love an archetype chat that has to do with pop culture.
Well, I mean, that's how I anchor it. That's how I get there. Don't worry, I have a list of
Ooh.
pop culture magicians. I mean, like the easiest ones to go to
Okay.
are the wizards, right?
Totally.
The Merlins, the Gandalfs.
Yep.
Gandalf probably not as much because he doesn't do a lot of teaching. Like he's not there to specifically impart a lesson. You know,
Yeah, it's more Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan is another
a
good,
good-
one. Yeah, Gandalf isn't really a magician in that archetype. He's more of a. I mean, like his in the story, the wizards in Middle Earth are like literally angels. Like they're just sent by God basically to help
Yeah.
to help the people, fulfill their purpose. Like he's lived for thousands of years,
Right.
But he doesn't. I mean, I guess he does
The
because
only dynamic that I can think of where it fits right is kind of like the Bilbo call to adventure aspect.
sure, but he's still. I mean, I guess sure. I mean,
Teaching
he knows,
like confidence, teaching to come outside of your comfort zone, like so he's not necessarily teaching magic.
right, and also thinking of like I think Faramir makes a reference to Gandalf being around Gondor as he was a boy. So I think there was a little implied education, maybe even Aragorn too, because he's way older than Aragorn, right? So I think it's implied that there was some mentorship, but that was not the primary purpose of his character. But
well, at least not in the movies, like in the segments that we saw.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that there is there's the continuity is the teacher that calls you to adventure is definitely a magician archetype.
Right, because Gandalf is kind of like, he knows that this will be good for him.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Like
he
you
knows.
can't just stay in your little hobbit hole. You got to do stuff.
Mm.
You got to learn things through.
Yeah. I have Mr. Miyagi too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, go ahead.
But he's a king. He's not a magician. He's not.
I mean, but he is a magician because he is like having a lot of the knowledge and passing it down. And there's like a rite of passage. There's rituals where like Daniel goes from wanting information and not having it to then through experience and education and teaching he then learns. So he does teach him in a way. And it doesn't look like, again, I think you made a great point, which like that's not how you would teach a maiden.
Right.
But he's still a magician, right? You know what I mean? Like he would do it differently.
And in order for him to fully step into like teaching Daniel the way that he needs to learn, like I think it also comes from like, what are you trying to teach somebody to do? Is this when Mr. Miyagi is teaching Daniel about life in general, that could be a maiden magician dynamic. But for the most part, his role is very specific. It is around martial arts. It is about a battle at some juncture of whatever movie we're referencing, So it's the warrior learning from the king, the one who's already walked that path. Rather than like, let's do this whimsical, fun thing to help you expand as a human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't do any of that?
I mean,
they
here and there.
It comes across as a sneaky lesson, but it's not whimsical and fun. It's more like do this mundane thing. You'll figure out why it was valuable later. Yeah.
Yeah. But Daniel's character is not rooted in the maiden archetype. Like building that character didn't start with the attributes of a maiden.
True.
Started with the attributes of a warrior.
Right. So can't the magician teach the warrior?
I mean, any archetype can teach any archetype.
I think this is
not the like. It's not the consort that we're talking about. It's not the equal and opposite balance of energy that we're calling in.
Right. I think like Mr. Miyagi teaching Daniel, and think of another more traditional magician teaching a maiden energy. I think the discrepancy or the difference is like how the warrior's learning and how the maiden's learning. I think the fact that it's not even, and they learn differently, and the magician will adapt to whoever he's teaching, but all the characteristics and qualities are not identical, but very similar. It's like the holder of knowledge, the rite of passage,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so interesting to think of, like, how would the magician teach a warrior, and then how would the same magician have to teach a maiden, right? Like, then could they, or like, how would you have to alter your lesson plan?
Alter your lesson
Oh
plan.
man,
I love that.
yeah. You know who else I have on here for
Who else?
Tony Stark?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Wow, you just don't like Tony Stark.
I don't like Tony Stark.
Oh
at
my
all.
gosh. Because another part of the magician is the technology piece. Right? Like part of the
Yeah.
part of what could be the hidden knowledge is the advancement of the technology that people like, reveal. It's like, oh, I created this phone that's a touchscreen. Oh my gosh, holy cow, right? And that's
Right.
like part of the wizardry almost, where you have learned or built something that you were then sharing and no one else is aware of. So
Does that make Spider-Man a maiden?
oh, that's cool. Probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would track. Spider-Man is definitely a maiden archetype.
Not a immature warrior. Only because Spider-Man wants to be taught by Iron Man, right? Like he wants to be the hero. Like he wants to be a hero. He wants to be included in the group. He has that kind of whimsical energy.
I don't think that the immature warrior has whimsical energy. I think they kind of have baby energy.
Right.
Like
Which is, yeah.
Like they can be kind of like Luke Skywalker whiny.
Yeah.
Like don't
Right.
almost like don't tell me what to do. I already know that. And Spider-Man doesn't have a lick of that.
Can I tell you a quality that I'm starting to dislike in people as I get older?
Oh wow.
And I've learned this. There was a golf podcast I listened to, which I love, but one of the guys on it is reacting to they interviewed someone about like changing habits or mindset, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy said something basically with his like time. The guy's like, you're gonna have to like develop a really strict practice schedule. Like not just like, oh, let me go outside in the simulator in my garage and just kind of fart around. It's like, no, figure out what exactly you're going to work on for how long, and do that. And this guy was like, I don't like that. And it's like, don't tell me what to do. I'm like, grow up, sir. Grow up. Like, have you think you can go your entire life without someone saying, this is what you're doing and this is when you're doing it?
Well,
I'm not saying that's the healthiest thing.
Particularly
I'm
somebody
just saying,
that you are turning to for some sort of guidance, mentorship, support in what you're trying to do.
Just the whole, don't tell me what to do as a personality trait. I have a hard time. I want to say grow up. First of all, my first question is
it compassion fatigue left over from teaching high school too long? Because they're all in that like defiant kind of.
I didn't quite mind it
when it was children.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But with adult human beings.
Right. Oh, it's just like, have you gotten to this age and you can't, like, first of all, you can't basically take an order or like a directive from superior or anything. Like, just grow up. Like, that doesn't grow up.
Mm-hmm.
Grow the heck up. It's just like, there's times and places.
It's like recognize that feeling prickly about that is an egoic response. Like,
right. Yeah.
Like you're allowing yourself to be disempowered by someone else's suggestion, as opposed to being like, this person is likely trying to help me / support me in a thing that I made a request about.
Yeah.
And now I'm annoyed and I don't want to hear you.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, that's tricky.
Just fired me up.
And they start to list all of these barriers of why they can't do that.
Oh, it's funny that, like, because I was looking up info on The Magician, because I can't find the book.
Where is that
book? I've talked about on this podcast 17 times.
Did you let somebody else borrow it?
I might have let, I don't know, I'll ask Joe and Jesse at Trivia. Because maybe. I don't know.
Huh.
Do we want to talk about, I forget the answer to this question, obviously. The masculine archetypes that I've read about. There is a healthy masculine, the healthy man energy, and then the shadow version, which has two aspects, a passive and active variant. So
Yep.
it's depicted as a triangle.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the same for the feminine energy? Is there shadow
Yes.
aspects? There are. All
Oh,
right,
yeah.
let's talk about that.
So attributes of maiden archetype tend to be around like openness, curiosity, a lot of growth, being able to be spontaneous and whimsical and kind of on a dime, like redirect a thing. The shadow aspects of maiden energy are things like being unwilling or unable to take responsibility for the actions that they're making. My eye is itchy. So like the maiden energy that kind of walks around being like, well, I'm just so helpless. Like I'm like I made a mistake, but like oopsie whoopsies without ever being like, oh, let me take accountability for my own choices and actions. So that shadow aspect maiden energy in like if we're going that would be a passive attribute like
Sure. Right, they're feigning.
What do I know?
Wow.
And then
Sounded like right out of
it's very Scarlett O'Hara.
I was gonna say Steel Magnolias.
It's very Scarlett O'Hara.
Definitely had an accent.
Very, very Scarlett. Just like, I'll think about that tomorrow. Think about that today kind of an energy. And then in a more active, there can be manipulation. There can be passive aggressive behavior where there might be some like sabotaging and things like that. Sometimes maiden energy can get competitive.
Unhealthy maiden.
Yeah, shadowy. Unhealthy maiden energy.
Okay.
Yep. And there ultimately is this root wound of the maiden, right? And that is that like I am not good enough. I'm not good enough. And sometimes people who are looping in that maiden energy try really hard to be good. Right? So this is where we see particularly in younger people who consider themselves more feminine, like there is I'm trying to think of how to explain this. Like they want so badly to prove themselves to others. And so this concept of being a good girl, right, sets in. And it's like, this is where they learn, like, I am not good enough. So what do I have to do to prove that I am good and therefore good enough to be accepted, to be loved, to be cared for, cared about, all of those things. So sometimes it stays in that realm of like that young feminine energy of trying to prove yourself constantly. Other times there is like the full rebelliousness of the maiden. It's like that kicks into high gear. So the maiden is always going to be rebellious, and that can have light aspects and shadow aspects, of course, just like anything else. Like rebellion is key, and it's kind of one of those aspects of this archetype in its light aspect that like makes progress happen in the world. Like new things, new ways of looking at things happen because of maiden energy.
Yeah.
Because there's so little fear. And then if they feel like it's a losing battle, this like trying to be the good girl, and they continue to get feedback of like, well, this isn't good enough, or this isn't good enough, or we don't believe you, or we don't trust you, or who are you? You're, this young, like flighty kind of thing, like this way that we communicate around describing young feminine energy. Then they can go, that's when the full rebel kicks in. And then it's kind of like, I can't be the good girl because I just keep trying and it's not working out. Then I'm going to be the bad girl, like the super bad girl.
Nice.
So, and I think a lot of people would probably put that in the category of a shadow aspect because it can be pretty manipulative.
Yeah.
But, my experience is people love a bad girl. People love a bad girl.
They say they do until they don't.
They love it until it's directed at them.
It's true. Yes. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Until you're in the crosshairs. Right.
Right.
Other kind of labels for the magician. I mean, there's the alchemist. Right. Is a word that keeps coming up. Right. The idea of taking two things that aren't something and making it into something.
Different.
Right. Like whatever it is.
Or shifting the properties of something energetically into something else. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is about also intellectual curiosity. It's about almost, we think of the hermit in a way, which I think part of one of the shadow aspects.
Like the Hermit Tarot card?
You like the Hermit Tarot card, yes. Would be be a magician archetype, not dissimilar from the actual magician card. But for the immature masculine energy, the boy energy, the healthy is the precocious child, right? The child that's kind of into things and understanding things, and like the parents like, what do you don't know what we're talking about, and then the kid will say something that proves yes they do, and it's like, oh crap. You know, I think in the example in the book they use Jesus as an example because I think there's a story of him as like a 12-year-old like talking to rabbis at the temple and like holding his own in a debate type thing. So it's like a kid that has no real right to be as actually wise or knowledgeable than they are. But the shadow aspects are, let's see, the passive one is just the dumb child. I just wrote dumb, but I think it's like the dumb. But I think it's more like playing dumb.
Like weaponized incompetence.
Weaponized incompetence, yeah. And the active shadow aspect is...
Well, because it's always going to be... The shadow aspect is going to have something to do, always, with how...
the know-it-all trickster.
Yeah.
Is what I think of Loki. Like,
okay.
Like in the MCU, Loki is the mischief maker, the trickster, who knows is smart enough to know what's going on, smart enough to know what the right quote unquote choice is, but he's gonna screw with you, right? Like that's his in the most unhealthy version of that character we've seen. That is him.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and so I think what's interesting about archetypes, because it's a lot of information to just kind of like memorize.
Oh yeah.
So I think a good like guiding question for the shadow aspects of any of the archetypes certainly applies to Maiden Magician. And it applies to all of the others as well. And that is if you don't know what the shadow aspect is, a good pathway to get there is to ask, what is the tactic of avoiding responsibility? Right? Like, how do you, in this archetype, avoid responsibility?
You trick your way out of it.
Right.
You manipulate, you dump it off on someone else.
You're passive, and you're like, well, I don't know anything. I can't.
Yeah.
I just didn't know. I can't be responsible because I just didn't know.
That's good. Hold on to that thought. That should go in your dissertation somewhere. That's how good it was.
Or it's like...
Or actually, don't. If I'm going to write a book on archetypes, you leave that alone.
Okay.
That's mine. TM.
Fair.
TM.
TM. Trademarked. Or it's like the shadow aspect of like the rebellious maiden. How do you avoid responsibility? Well, it's like, I don't actually have to take responsibility for this because I don't agree with it. Like, it's the like false superiority.
Okay.
You know, like, well, of course I'm going to break this rule because this rule is irrelevant and stupid.
Yeah.
You know, so like that whatever your tactic is for avoiding responsibility in that archetype is a very clear clue.
That's good.
To the shadow aspects.
I love that.
That you haven't addressed.
How to avoid responsibility is the shadow aspect. That's so cool. So we've obviously talked about the healthy magician. You want to hear about the shadow aspects of the magician?
Yeah, because I never can come up with them. Like, I just always think of the good things.
Right. So the more active version is the detached manipulator. Ooh. This is someone that is accruing knowledge not for the betterment of himself or other people to initiate into something. It's more of like, how can I use this to get something materialistic? How can I manipulate people? Power, money, right?
Superiority.
Superiority, right. So it's using using the knowledge and the desire for or of it to manipulate. Yeah. So like for your own personal gain.
Which would make sense why there's a lot of that within spiritual communities.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that like, well, I've had this thought.
Right.
And I want to cash in on it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to share it until I can protect it in a way that it is my property.
I mean, it's like a step beyond what you would think of intellectual property, where it's like, I want to make sure no one steals this. It's like, I want to make sure that it is mine and only mine, and if anyone else wants to use it, it's going to cost them $1,000.
So
right?
much.
It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the fine line between protecting something and then making
I
sure,
think it's like the
no one
difference
else can have it.
between it's important to give credit where ideas have come from and to cite sources. It's another thing to be like, for you to have access to my wisdom. And, you know, every time you want to open this article, it's going to be, you know, hundreds of dollars. Kind of thing.
And that's like the really shadowy manipulator. But it's the article I just looked at talks about other aspects of the shadow part of magician that aren't as like actually dangerous and like toxic and hurtful, but like they're sneaky and you don't think about them. Like this said, I mean, a cynical detachment from people is like a of the detached manipulator, saying that like especially when confronted with commitment, either like commitment to your passions, your pleasures, or anything like something you want to do for joy, or some like any sort of commitment that you avoid. The response is like, well, the unexamined life is not worth living. Or it's like, I'm choosing to spend my time in study and solitude, and then like an unhealthy hermit, right? You know, it's like there's a difference between healthy introspection, which is another quality of the magician.
Enneagram 5.
Yeah. Right. It's like avoiding contact with the world under the guise of, well, I'm going to be in my study and do this and go inward and only inward, right? They're not committing themselves. Now the magician, I think, is part of the responsibility is sharing the knowledge that you have. And that's why I think it's the shadow part, mainly that you are withdrawing, withholding, I guess, in a way, maybe, and like no intention of ever interacting or committing to something. And I read that, I'm like, oh, damn.
Right.
That's good.
Well, and that's a great example of why an unhealed magician archetype within you would create a barrier between fully embracing the lover archetype in its masculine expression too.
Yeah.
Like those are like these archetypes are so connected, much in the same way that the maiden archetype needs to be healed in order to step into the witch. Because what happens when a maiden is in their shadow, or when a maiden experiences so much trauma and that root wound takes over of like, I am not good enough, it prohibits use of voice. So if you spend enough time abdicating responsibility and not speaking up because, oh, well, what do I know? I don't know anything. I'm just the maiden, you know, that becomes a habit, and then it becomes part of like the egoic operation in the world. You get to the witch and you are not equipped with the nervous system response that you need to say what you mean what you say, and take responsibility for what you say, even when it pisses other people off.
Right.
Which is, you know, why I think so many people have all the throat chakra issues that they do. It's just this consistent suppression of their voice out of fear of that judgment. And so it becomes like so passive.
So interesting. Yeah, when I read that about I thought of people that I know or knew, and I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
This I felt bad for them, because it's like, oh, this is calling you out. Yeah. I'm like, oh, thank God I got married.
Thank God you got married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not
Is that the antidote?
Well, it's commitment to something is an antidote. You know, and your job doesn't count. I don't know, to a degree.
Well, I mean, we were reading about this morning because that Joseph Campbell quote, right?
Yeah.
Of like the difference between, like, I mean, I'm going to butcher the language because I don't really know shit about sacraments, but like,
Well, just for your own knowledge, that's not usually how we talk about them.
it's a sacrament because there's essentially something that serves yourself that you have to give up. Is that true?
In a marriage?
No, a sacrament, period.
Did you give something up?
Something that serves you or your ego has to be given up.
Jesus, I didn't know we were going to discuss theology.
Well, I
wish
mean,
I knew.
what does the word sacrament mean? Isn't it like, it sounds like sacrifice to me in some way.
I think it has more to do with sacred.
So it's sacred.
I think it's more of a yeah, because they're
Okay.
all used in transition periods of your life. So there's baptism, which initiates you into the church. The reconciliation, which is the first time you confess sins, like your first time you go into a confession.
Okay.
The Eucharist, which is receiving communion. Confirmation is another big one because that's where in the eyes of the church you're an adult.
Okay.
So it's like that's the
When you're 12?
initiation. 7th grade, yeah. Bar mitzvahs are 13.
I know.
But yeah, that's a baptism. Well, and when my dad would teach RCIA, like the classes for people that want to convert to Catholicism, I remember like the services or that ceremony was part of maybe Easter. Like when if like people would learn all like,
well, that would make sense because you're reborn in a new faith.
right, like the classes would be like all fall, winter maybe leading up to Easter Mass, and then sometimes it would be like the priest would be like, oh, we have people that are finishing their thing right now, and I think they're baptized and confirmed in the same thing, or like they're definitely receiving confirmation. I think in that part.
Okay.
When I did it, it was 7th grade, and all 7th graders did it. And it was its whole separate day of mass in church. Like it was a big thing.
Big thing.
Yeah. So that's marriage.
So marriage
Matrimony.
itself is a sacrament.
Yes.
And that idea of like, it is no longer all about you.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, I don't know. I don't remember how it's taught in the Catholic Church. Like we didn't do pre-Cana. I know
we did not.
Been a while.
I would not have been invited to that.
No, if we were to get married in a church, yes, we would have done that.
But I couldn't do that because I don't have.
No, yes, because if you wanted to receive communion, you could have done taken the classes and learned about it. But to be married in a Catholic church, I don't know if both people need to be baptized.
Really?
I don't think so.
Well, I was baptized. I just wasn't baptized Catholic.
I don't think that matters.
Oh.
I think one thing you do is called pre-Cana, where the couple has conversations with a priest about marriage.
With a person who's never been married.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. We are all very aware.
Okay.
Of the irony of that situation.
Just clarifying.
Yes. But you don't need to convert.
It's just yet another example of like any time I need to be like, wow, do I have enough experience? Do I have enough experience
Not
with this
trying
thing?
to
the next time that I'm like, I want you to teach this class and you're like, I don't know if I am in a place or have had enough lived experience to teach this, I'm gonna be like, pre-Cana.
Okay.
And you're gonna be like, right.
It's my Winter Soldier activation word for when you want me to teach something.
I'm gonna be like, you're good. You're good.
So that's matrimony. I think there's only one more, and I think it's last rites.
Okay.
It's like a priest will come in and give you a blessing, confession.
Right before you die.
Just before you die. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, I think like when we think about those the shadow aspects of just kind of being more like, what's the right word? It's not like your energy, your attention, your focus is much more on the self than it is with the other, whoever the other is, whether we're talking about
with
relationship,
the shadow, like
outside world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean like, so the shadow aspect of the mother archetype, just for a throwback, right, is like the martyr, the doing like the too much in the other direction of like, nothing is about the self, nothing is to care for the self, it's all externally sourced and motivated. When ideally you're trying to find a balance in both of those things. And that's where you can integrate into witch and lover in a way that is its fullest expression. Because like in the masculine, right, if you can't move outside of your own self improvement, self awareness, self just being the center of the universe, if you can't move past that, whereas the warrior is all about how they're externally being perceived in the world in a lot of ways. And so both of those things have to come in balance to actually be able to step into the archetype of the lover. And the thing is, I think like the archetype of the lover, so when we talk about this in 6 months, I think that is actually the archetype that the majority of masculine embodied people struggle with the most.
The lover?
Yep. I think that they want to pretend that that's the easiest archetype. Like, how hard it is to be, Gomez Adams. But, like, you got to strike a very perfect balance there between, like, being super empowered and surrendering to something outside yourself.
Yeah.
Yep.
I also like this quote. It says, the shadow aspect of the magician thinks too much, stands back from life instead of living it. So like too much thinking, not enough doing.
Yeah, too much like, well, if I do this, then maybe this will happen and then that will happen, instead of just like, why don't you just figure out the next step and move forward?
I mean, to me, I don't know how superficial this is, but like someone who is really interested in reading about the Battle of Gettysburg but never thinks or wants to go there. Kind of in a way. Kind of a little bit. I mean, that's a very simple example. But just the idea of like, it's like the Bilbo before the adventure, right? It's like your life is just here. You no interest in growing or doing anything beyond your garden. You know what I mean? Which is nothing wrong with a garden, but even Gandalf is like, there's more to life than your doilies kind of thing.
Yeah, and from a spiritual perspective, for me it's like studying all of the texts, reading the Bhagavad Gita, being curious and open, but not ever applying the principles of what you're learning to the outside world and how you interact with others.
The innocent one, the passive part of the shadow of the magician, basically wants the power of the magician but does not want to do anything to get it. Lazy.
Oh, lazy.
It's like, if someone's like, God, I wish this book, if I could just touch it to my brain, and every piece of information was just in there.
I mean, who doesn't want that?
Sure, but also like at some point you grow up from that idea and you read the book. Right. Like, I mean, to have that thought at 15 to 18 when you're in high school, that's fine. If you're having that thought at 35,
well, sometimes it's just about time, okay?
If you're having that thought at 35,
like if I could just put those books right in my head, that would be really helpful.
It would. And
time-wise,
you don't just sit there staring at them thinking, I wish this information was in my brain.
No.
You actually pick it up and read it.
I do.
That's my point. And you're not 15.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. This also said how to access the magician.
Oh.
Like things you can do. That's why I like this book that I can't believe I lost. I'm just going to have to buy 3 or 4 copies and just hold on to them, because I either give them out or let people borrow them. But I love that when it's like, here's what this means, but like, here's how you channel this energy. Here's something you could do that represents this energy, which is, of course, I love. Lifelong learning, which I think to an extent, our descriptions were kind of pooping on that idea, but it's really only if that's like, you are only doing it for yourself or no interest in being part of anything other than yourself. So lifelong learning isn't bad. Meditation. This is what I loved. Creating something. Creating anything. I think that's the thing. For creation's sake. For creation's sake. I think that's the thing that not enough men do. Like if I were to ask 10 different men, I said, what would you consider your art to be? Do you think they would have an answer as like something you, I mean, I hate to say hobby, but like something you spend time on doing, that you create something just for the sake of doing it.
Right. Like and I would, yes, I agree with you, because in my mind, I'm like, correct. The majority of adult masculine presenting people I know
Mm.
are completely disconnected from their second chakra.
Mm. Wait, is that so sacral?
Sacral.
Sacral. I
Look
didn't
at
know.
you.
Say second. I didn't go. Was down, up, or up to down? Down, up.
Down,
'cause
up.
It rises. That makes sense.
Sacral. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So like that space of creative impulse where it's
Mm.
not like, you know, and here we are on a podcast, but I'm like not talking about dudes talking in microphones either. Talking about like what are you creating from a space of just pure inspiration that flows into you.
Well, I think that's a good point. Where if you're just dudes podcasting, that's part of like the circular, cyclical
Yeah.
talking and learning, but not doing. If you took it
Right.
a step further and was like, I actually did the thing I talked about.
Right.
I think that's a step in the healthy magician, right? Not
Yeah,
just
sure.
sitting and talking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't think, you know, I don't think we should gloss over that there is that creative spark aspect that like you were inspired by
Mm.
the universe or whatever, you caught that inspiration and you brought it into something tangible.
Yeah.
Like you brought it into fruition, whether
Right.
it's
It's
planting lavender.
Well, I mean, it's when you hear I've on the witchier side of TikTok lately, what I'm trying to do, and it's like it's just the idea of manifesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this idea was a thing. It was just energy. It was just particles or whatever. And then the act of making it something is like you've made it into a thing. Like you
Mhm.
created something that was just in the ether. Like that's part of the process and the point. And I think a lot of times we get hung up on what's the point? Why am I doing this?
Right.
Why bother? When you're just doing it for doing its sake.
Right.
Right.
Like there has to be some kind of return on investment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because capitalism ruins everything.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Facts.
Nice. Well,
And I think how you harness your maiden
Mm.
is with staying in like flow and curiosity and noticing where you feel expansive and where you feel constricted.
Mm.
I think about like the image of like the perfect archetypal example of these two like kind of embodied
Mm.
is the May Queen and the Green Man.
oh.
So in earth-based spirituality, we're looking at like May Day is coming up, Yeltana, Beltane. We're going to talk about that next week.
Next
I think.
week, yeah.
So that idea that like there's this fun dancing fire festival, like, and beautiful white dresses and maypoles and ribbons and putting on like your Easter dress, kind of like just full self-expression without holding anything back. And the Green Man arrives as like the orchestrator of the spring and the new growth and all and the two come together in G-rated hand-holding or holy matrimony, I don't know.
Nice.
Yeah. We want to get into the details of some of those stories.
No. So you're saying this, I was thinking of the Ballad of Baron and Luthien it's like the story that mirrors Aragorn and Arwen.
Oh.
It's like it's like this human is wandering through the woods and see this elf dancing and he watches and they fall in love. And Aragorn references it in this extended cut of The Two Towers, but it is its own separate story. I got it right up here if you want to read it.
I think you're gonna read it to me.
Okay.
So I'm in my maiden.
Okay. Maybe
and
well
you're
I'll
the magician reading me the story.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh boy.
Yep.
We'll see. I'll try. One other thing about this energy, like I think we commented before, how this is the energy. Like knowing this information practically, not only like how can I cultivate this archetype by doing these activities, how does it work in this pairing, like this match?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
am I trying to teach you a new game or something like that? When you're not in the maiden, it is either not happening or significantly harder. If it's like
Yep.
you're in your maiden, It's like, oh, here's a new game. Let's learn it today. And you're
Psyched.
you're psyched. You
Yeah.
know, you're in that space where like you're curious and interested, and you're not having to like
Mm-hmm.
learn something against your will, basically.
Right.
And just having that knowledge of archetypes and cycles.
Yeah.
It's like this is a good time. I should teach you this game right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas like the second that I get into mother archetype, like
Mhm.
when I've moved on from Maiden and I'm in mother archetype, like if I have energy left over after doing all the things that need to be done, I'm like, you know what's a good idea? Painting a room. It's like it goes to like nesting, cooking, outside beauteous,
Right.
decorate. Like it's always about like hearth and home.
Yeah.
It does not go to the place of like, let's just play for the sake
Right.
of play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
I think it's really just like it unlocks a whole other language of being able to, for lack of a better word, I want to say like depersonalize something, right? It's not like, no, stop trying to get me to learn this game. This is stupid.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like I'm just not there today.
Mhm.
I'm not in
Sure.
this place today. And I know that I will be.
Yeah. It just gives you language over something that we kind of only felt or sort of knew or didn't actually name.
Yeah.
For me. So it's like being able to call it something and identify it and know how it plays off, your energy.
Yeah.
Or anyone else's energy.
Well, and also when you understand that you have these archetypes that you move through, you're less likely to engage in like that internal negative self-talk of like, last week I was really doing a great job like writing my paper. Like I was doing such a good job. I was in a flow. Everything seemed so easeful. And this week the idea of writing a paper makes me want to pull my eyeballs out and squish them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good knowledge to have.
It is.
Avoid the eyeball squishing
At all costs.
at all costs. Well, stay tuned for next week when I think you already mentioned.
There's way less goofing around when it's just us. I would like everybody to acknowledge
What?
that the podcasting
Yeah.
stays much more on task when there's only two people talking.
Yeah, I think I don't think that's who is involved. I
think it's just sheer
It's
numbers.
just a numbers thing.
Stuff goes sideways and gets goofy.
It does, which I don't mind.
Nah, it's fun too.
Yeah, next week we're talking about Beltane
Beltane.
with Jessica and your mother.
Fun times.
It is. I can't wait. So for the Wi-Fi pod, enjoy your magicianing and your maidening. This is Matt.
This is Jeannie.
Thanks, everyone.